Before America became the most powerful nation on Earth, this land belonged to another world. A world of forests, rivers, tribes, and forgotten civilizations. Long before European ships crossed the Atlantic, millions already lived here, hunting, trading, fighting, surviving. Then, ships appeared on the horizon, carrying ambition, conquest, disease, and empire. At first, there was trade, curiosity, and fragile peace, but the balance would not last. Before the armies arrived, disease had already begun its work. Entire nations vanished without ever seeing the enemy. Across the coast, new colonies emerged from the wilderness, fragile, starving, but growing stronger every year. Some colonies nearly disappeared. Winter, hunger, disease, fear. The frontier showed no mercy. Then came tobacco, and suddenly, the colonies became profitable. Land became wealth, and wealth demanded labor. Millions were taken from Africa, chained, transported, sold, and forced into the growing machine of empire. Farther north, another empire was rising, built not on religion, but on trade, money, and commerce. Beaver pelts became gold, rivers became trade routes, and the wilderness became an empire of profit. As settlements expanded, peace collapsed, and the frontier descended into endless war. One war nearly destroyed New England entirely. Towns burned, villages vanished, thousands died. Britain, France, Spain, and the Dutch all fought for control of the continent. The struggle for North America became a global war, and the balance of power began to shift forever. By the 1700s, the old world was disappearing and a new nation was beginning to emerge. Beneath every city, every road, every empire, traces of the older world still remain. Long before the United States existed, another world stood here, and its echoes still shape America today. Across the center of the continent, entire worlds still existed beyond colonial control. The frontier did not belong entirely to Europe. Powerful native nations still ruled enormous territories. Spain expanded across the south and west, building missions, forts, and colonies across the frontier. Across the Atlantic world, money, slavery, and trade connected entire empires together. The colonies grew wealthier, louder, and more dangerous every year. Empires no longer saw wilderness, they saw land, trade, and opportunity. The deeper the colonies pushed inland, the more violent the frontier became. Entire peoples were displaced, scattered, or destroyed as the continent changed forever. North America had become one of the most contested regions on Earth, and slowly, the colonies themselves began turning against the empire that created them. A new nation was about to rise from centuries of war, expansion, and sacrifice. Long before modern America, before the skyscrapers, before the empire, another world stood here, and its shadow never truly disappeared. Beneath modern America lie the remains of forgotten nations, buried beneath concrete, steel, and time. Empires were not built peacefully. They were built through hunger, labor, blood, and conquest. For settlers, the wilderness became a place of terror, where death could emerge from the trees without warning. Many colonies survived by only the thinnest margin, one harsh winter away from collapse. Human beings became property, bought, sold, and transported across an expanding empire. Year after year, the old world grew smaller, while the colonies grew larger. Small settlements slowly transformed into cities, and cities transformed into centers of global power. Even the greatest empires struggled to control the vastness of North America. The continent was shaped by endless conflict, and every victory carried a terrible cost. Long before the United States became a superpower, before the flags, before the cities, another America existed here, and its story still echoes through the land today. Every mile inland demanded sacrifice, hunger, cold, and survival. Forests that had stood for centuries began disappearing in only decades. Entire communities were forced westward, away from lands their ancestors had known for generations. The colonies were no longer isolated outposts. They were becoming an empire in the making. Across the ocean, Europe and America became tied together through trade, war, and ambition. The balance of power had changed forever, and the old world was beginning to disappear. Eventually, the colonies no longer wanted to remain subjects of a distant king. A revolution was approaching, one that would reshape the entire continent. By the end, millions were gone, empires had risen, and a new nation stood in their place. Before the United States, before the empire, before modern civilization, another America stood here, and its shadow still remains. Entire civilizations faded into memory, leaving behind only fragments, stories, and silence. Expansion never truly stopped. The frontier continued moving west, year after year. The frontier consumed everyone alike, settlers, soldiers, tribes, and empires. A completely different world was emerging, one built from trade, expansion, and conquest. Iron, gunpowder, and industry slowly transformed the balance of power. The colonies became richer, larger, and increasingly impossible to control. Some tribes resisted until the very end, refusing to surrender the world they once knew. New ideas spread rapidly through the colonies: liberty, independence, revolution. From centuries of conflict, a new nation finally emerged. Long before modern America, before the skyscrapers, before global power, another world stood here, and its echoes still remain beneath the land today. By the end of the wars, countless lives had vanished into the wilderness, forgotten by history. In the darkness of the frontier, faith became one of the few things people could still hold on to. Old native trails slowly became colonial roads, and colonial roads became the foundations of modern America. Trade shaped the continent as much as war. Rivers became arteries of empire. The dream of land, wealth, and freedom kept pushing settlers deeper into the continent. Long before written history, stories were carried through memory, fire, and generations. The frontier was violent, unstable, and often beyond the reach of law. Europe's empires collided across North America, and the continent paid the price. By the late 18th century, the old colonial world was beginning to collapse. Before modern America, before the empire, before the dream, another world stood here, and history never truly erased it. Many forts, towns, and battlefields disappeared back into the wilderness. The rivers witnessed everything: trade, migration, war, and empire. Wealth poured into the colonies, and with it came even greater ambition. Beyond the mountains, new frontiers waited, dangerous, unknown, and unforgiving. Native nations faced impossible choices: resist, negotiate, or disappear. Words became weapons, and ideas spread faster than armies. The British Empire refused to let the colonies go without a fight. The American Revolution transformed the colonies forever, but the land still carried the scars of centuries. Even now, beneath modern America, the echoes of the older world still remain. Long before the United States became a superpower, another America existed here, and its story still lives beneath the land. Forests disappeared, rivers were redirected, and the continent itself began to change forever. Entire worlds vanished quietly, disappearing into the horizon. Trade became power, and power transformed small colonies into future empires. Villages once filled with life became silent ruins hidden beneath the wilderness. Empires claimed the land, but the land itself resisted every empire that tried to control it. The colonial world slowly evolved into something entirely new: modern America. History was never truly erased. It survived beneath the surface, waiting to be remembered. From muddy colonial outposts came one of the most powerful nations the world had ever seen. America was not born from one story, but from countless struggles, sacrifices, and collisions between worlds. Long before modern America, before the empire, before the dream, another world stood here, and its story still echoes across the land today. The frontier kept moving, driven by industry, ambition, and the hunger for expansion. Lands once considered sacred were transformed into resources, property, and profit. The small colonial ports eventually became the financial heart of a rising superpower. The past never completely vanished. It still walks beside the modern world. Beneath modern towns and highways, the land still remembers the wars that shaped it. From wilderness came colonies. From colonies came revolution. And from revolution came an empire. Some stories survived, carried quietly through generations. Even after the world changed forever, America was built slowly, through centuries of migration, conflict, trade, suffering, and ambition. Beneath every city, beneath every empire, another world still exists in memory. Long before the United States became a global superpower, another America stood here, and its echoes still shape the nation today. Beyond the settlements, the wilderness still stretched for thousands of miles, untamed, silent, waiting. The people who knew the land best could move through it like ghosts. Ships carried more than cargo. They carried ideas, cultures, diseases, and ambition. Survival in early America demanded a terrible price. Every winter threatened starvation. Every storm threatened death. Long before European maps, trade already connected distant nations across the continent. The Dutch saw opportunity where others saw wilderness. Fur became one of the first great fortunes of colonial America. Every new farm, every new road, pushed the frontier deeper into native lands. Violence became part of everyday life on the frontier. Iron and gunpowder reshaped the balance of power across the continent. Native nations understood the danger, and many prepared to resist. Fear haunted the frontier at night. Raids could come without warning. Farther north, the French built an entirely different empire through rivers and trade. To Europeans, the continent seemed endless, larger than anything they had ever known. As the colonies grew wealthier, tensions with Britain continued growing as well. Entire generations disappeared during the centuries of expansion and disease. The more Europeans explored, the more they wanted to control. In the South and West, Spain still ruled enormous territories across North America. The frontier was a place where peace could vanish in an instant. Entire settlements could disappear overnight, leaving behind only smoke, ashes, and silence. The native nations watched the colonies grow larger every year. Britain intended to dominate the continent, no matter the cost. Taverns became centers of rumor, politics, and revolution. Winter was often deadlier than battle itself. Some tribes chose alliance, others chose resistance, but none escaped the coming changes. The wilderness slowly retreated as farms, roads, and towns spread outward. The Atlantic slave trade became one of the foundations of colonial wealth. By the 18th century, the colonies were no longer quiet outposts. Before the empire, before the cities, this continent belonged to another world. Harbors became the gateways of empire, connecting America to the entire Atlantic world. Disease, hunger, and war shattered entire communities across the continent. The colonies were becoming increasingly militarized, preparing for larger wars ahead. France controlled vast territories through forts, rivers, and alliances with native nations. British taxation pushed the colonies closer and closer toward rebellion. Entire nations slowly faded from the lands they had known for centuries. Behind every colony stood the pursuit of wealth, trade, and power. North America became one front in a much larger struggle between global empires. Resistance spread through the colonies, despite the risks, imprisonment, and execution. The colonies were no longer small settlements. They were becoming the foundations of a future nation. Across the colonies, secret meetings prepared the foundations of revolution. The British Empire saw rebellion as a direct threat to its authority. America was preparing for a conflict unlike anything the colonies had ever seen. Native nations understood that another massive war was coming. Britain attempted to crush the colonies economically before open war fully erupted. The anger inside the colonies could no longer be contained. Most soldiers were ordinary people, farmers, workers, immigrants. The British Army was one of the most powerful military forces in the world. Then, the first shots were fired, and the American Revolution began. A continent shaped by centuries of empire was about to create something entirely new. The revolution demanded endurance, sacrifice, and survival against impossible odds. Leadership became critical as the colonies fought for their future. The war spread across forests, rivers, farms, and cities. Thousands suffered beyond the battlefield through hunger, disease, and exhaustion. Native nations were once again trapped between competing empires. The revolution depended not only on armies, but on ordinary people. Control of the Atlantic remained one of the greatest challenges of the war. Slowly, the impossible began to feel achievable. The British Empire was beginning to lose control of the colonies. From centuries of conflict, a new nation was finally emerging. The colonies now faced the impossible task of creating an entirely new nation. Independence was no longer just an idea. It became a declaration to the world. For the first time, many believed victory was truly possible. The war had become far more costly than Britain expected. Yet for many native nations, the revolution solved nothing. America emerged from war damaged, exhausted, but alive. Freedom came at an enormous human cost. Trade quickly returned, and the new nation began building its economy. Expansion did not end with independence. In many ways, it only accelerated. The foundations of modern America had finally been laid. Independence created a nation, but it also unleashed new ambitions. The frontier continued moving west, carrying settlers deeper into the continent. For native nations, the struggle for survival was far from over. The young republic rapidly grew through trade, industry, and expansion. Yet the past never truly disappeared. It remained hidden beneath the modern world. In only a few centuries, North America transformed more dramatically than almost any region on Earth. America was built from countless stories, victories, tragedies, and collisions between worlds. The colonies that once struggled simply to survive eventually became a global superpower. Beneath every city, every road, and every empire, the echoes of the older world still remain. Long before modern America, before the skyscrapers, before the empire, another world stood here, and its story still lives across the land today. America was not born in a single moment. It was forged through centuries of war, ambition, survival, and sacrifice. And beneath the modern world, the older America still remains, waiting to be remembered. Subscribe and step deeper into the untold history of the world.